Hey, I want to take some time today to address a topic that I think most of us can agree on. And that topic is, that idea is, that cheap polymer guns suck. They're garbage. They're no good, right? Well, I don't know if I agree with that. And I'm going to tell you why I don't agree with that. And I'm going to address this topic today because I recently received an email from one of my viewers named NetFlutter. I don't think that's their real name, but that's the name they use, where they said, hey, I recently found a CZP-10C on sale, but the price is so low that it makes me worry that it might be a Taurus quality gun despite all the good things they've heard about it. Well, I think that question has two false narratives in it. There's two false preconceived notions in that question alone that I want to address today. One is that a polymer gun has to be $5, $6, or more $100 before it can be of any quality. I just don't think that's true. There's a reason some of those guns are expensive, but it doesn't have much to do with quality or performance. Not often does it have to do with quality or performance. And also in that question, it kind of assumes that Taurus guns are junk. Well, I've never had that experience. In fact, everything I've seen, experienced, heard about Taurus polymer guns, especially the newer Taurus polymer guns, is that they're a great bargain, that they're a great gun at a great price. So I can't really slam Taurus polymer guns. In fact, I think it's probably the opposite. I think they're pretty good and they're priced appropriately. But that aside, I want to address why people think polymer guns have to be expensive to be any good. It's because that's what they're used to paying. That's the main reason why they think that. It's kind of like if you were a rich kid raised in Manhattan and you've always paid $500 for a hand job. Always. Every time you get a hand job, $500. Well, you start thinking, well, it takes $500. That's what it costs to get a decent hand job. So let's say you're from Manhattan and now you're traveling. You're going down to Florida or something and you stop at a Waffle House in Alabama and you're offered a perfectly reasonable $40 hand job. But you're like, whoa, $40? I don't know. No, not going to happen. There's got to be something wrong here. You're either going to yank my dick off or you've got a penis. One or the other, man or woman, they have a penis if they're going to give you a $40 hand job because you know hand jobs cost $500, so something's wrong here. Well, there's nothing wrong there. In Alabama, $40 is a perfectly reasonable price for a hand job from a perfectly reasonable person. You're just not used to that fact. And that's what I think most people who buy polymer guns suffer from. They've always paid, $500, $600, $700 for polymer guns thinking that's what it costs to get a good one. When that's not the case. There's reasons guns are more expensive. Often you're paying for a brand name. Glock, H&K, Walther, all of those you're paying some for just the name. Especially with Glock, you're paying a lot just for the name. There's also materials. Some gun makers use more expensive materials. They use better steels. They use better polymers. So, of course, their guns cost a little more. H&K and Walther, they fall into this category. And then there's cosmetic stuff. Some of the guns, especially H&K and Walther to a lesser degree, they spend a lot of time on the cosmetics. They buff out mold lines. They retexture polymer. They make sure all their lines are perfect. They have good contours, really tight clearances. That costs money. So, of course, that gun costs a little bit more. But none of these things have to really do with how good a gun it is. They just have to do with how the materials it's made out of, which very seldomly will have any effect on the gun, especially not in short term, like a polymer gun is usually used for, or how the gun looks. They don't really have all that much to do with how it functions. Now, another reason a gun could be really expensive is because of where it's made. If you buy a gun made in Smyrna, Tennessee, where it's cheap to produce it, it's cheap to ship it to the U.S. market, etc., well, that gun's going to be less expensive than if you buy a gun made in Sweden or wherever, where every single factory worker makes $200,000 a year and gets 6 weeks of paid vacation. Well, of course, it's going to cost more for that manufacturer to make that gun and more for to ship it over here, so that's going to cost more. So that's a legitimate reason for a gun to cost more. Still, once again, has nothing to do with the quality of the gun or how the gun will function. But I think the number one reason, other than the actual cost of producing the gun, that a gun costs more money than it should, like a polymer gun, is marketing. It's because you will pay it. And you've been conditioned to think that it has to be expensive to be good. Remember, Gaston wanted to sell Glocks for under $200 when he first made them. To this day, a Glock only costs about $70 to produce. The vast majority of it is profit. That's how he got so rich. That's why he's flying around in private jets. It doesn't cost that much to make a polymer gun. So they don't need to be as expensive as they are, but people think they're supposed to be that expensive, so they pay that for them. And they think that if anything isn't that expensive, it isn't any good. But really, price is really not a good factor when it comes to determining the quality of a gun. Now, another reason you might pay more for a gun that a lot of people don't consider is if you're buying a gun that's a new model. They just made it. Well, a lot of times gun manufacturers don't know how well that gun's going to do. And they're like, well, we got to recoup all the production costs and all the design costs and all this other stuff, all this research and development, etc., as quickly as possible. So often you'll see guns start off more expensive than they should really be, and then they kind of fall down over a period of time. Like I've seen the P10Cs dropping a little bit now because of that, because they've recouped their costs and they're doing well. So that's another reason a gun can be expensive, but once again, it has nothing to do with the quality. Now, some gun manufacturers can make 1,000 of them and it doesn't really bother them. They're big enough to absorb the cost, or they're not really worried about whether the gun does really well. Like the CZ, I don't think they really care if the P10 does really well. I think they just use that to subsidize their regular line and to draw interest to their regular lines. So sometimes gun companies don't need to make a gun really expensive because to do what it needs to do, it doesn't have to be a huge marketing success. And I think marketing is the biggest thing about polymer guns. So that's why a CZ P10C can be a better gun than a $600, $700 gun, but still only costs $360. Same thing with Taurus. Taurus makes so many guns that they can sell a gun for $300. That's as good as a $600 gun from another company. It's all about marketing, and with you, it's all about perception, what you're willing to buy and how much you think things should cost. So I guess in the end, the whole point is here that I don't agree that price is a good factor in determining whether a polymer gun is good or not. Just being expensive doesn't make it a good gun. And being inexpensive doesn't make it a bad gun. There's lots of other factors that come into account, and usually, like I say, when you're paying a high price, you're paying for something other than the gun. Like with the Glock, like I said, he wanted to market it for less than $200, but because people like me and you think things have to be expensive to be good, his marketing people told him, if you put it on the market at $200, it'll never sell. People will think it's junk. If we put a $500 price tag on it or a $450 price tag on it, people will be like, that must be quality because it's expensive, and that's how they get us. So in the end, I guess, like I'm saying, price does not denote quality, especially when it comes to polymer guns. So I guess the whole moral of my story here is that just because a polymer gun isn't expensive, that doesn't mean it has a penis. Hey, today I want to take a moment here, not a moment. Tonight I want to take a little time. Hey, I want to take a moment today. No, not a moment. Fuck was that? And that is that most cheap polymer guns suck. No, not most. It's cheap now, so it can't possibly be good. Fuck! Email from someone who asked me, hey, I just clutter on the chats, and he asked me, he says, fuck, why can't I get to what he fucking said? Now, there are a lot of reasons why expensive, but people think because they're Taurus and because they're inexpensive, they're bad. And fuck today because I received an email recently. God damn! Polymer guns suck. They're garbage. They're not any good at all. I think most of us can agree with that. Or can we? Fuck! Could that be more unfucking natural?